The Council of Erythros sat high in their crystal dome, its walls glowing with pale blue light. They studied Earth's tiny blue dot through ancient telescopes. For age upon age, humans had lived quietly on distant worlds. Then whispers reached them. Humanity's science had grown, its spirit had hardened. Fear gripped the council like a cold hand. A lone envoy from Terra stepped before the judges. Her uniform was simpler, dark blue tunic and a silver badge. Her face was calm, but her eyes shone with sorrow and strength. She bowed once, then spoke in clear, measured tones. "Great Council," she said, "we come in peace. We carry designs for healing machines and seeds for barren worlds. Judge us not by rumors of war." A murmur ran through the marble chamber. The chief judge, his voice echoing on polished stone, replied, "Your words are kind, but your records speak of weapon tests and fleet drills. You expand too fast. You threaten the balance we have kept for centuries." He folded his arms. "Leave now, or we will force you into the void." The envoy's heart sank. She had hoped for understanding, yet she raised her chin and spoke. "Again, exile will bring starvation and despair. I will warn you, it will awake a fire you cannot control. If you cast us into the void, you will see the strength of human will." The judges exchanged glances. One laughed softly, a sound like brittle glass. "Human will is no match for our ancient decrees. Prepare the troops," another ordered. "We will show them the void's embrace." Within hours, human ships gathered at the edge of the council's star lanes. Families boarded with heavy hearts. Children clutched small toys. Mothers pressed soft blankets into tiny hands. Fathers carried bundles of food, seeds, and tools. The refugees wore expressions of dread and determination. They knew the void was cold and lifeless. Still, they held on to hope born from the knowledge that humanity never surrendered. General Markovna, a veteran with silver hair tied tight at her neck, walked among them. She placed a gentle hand on each soldier's shoulder. "We carry the spirit of Earth," she said in a firm whisper. "We will shine like a beacon in the darkness." A young engineer named Leah met her gaze. Leah had trembling hands, yet her eyes glowed. She whispered, "We will build new worlds from ice and rock." As the last transport ship powered up, the envoy raised her voice one final time. She spoke into the void, her words carried on open channels. "We warned you. In that warning lies mercy. In your refusal, you seal your regret." A shudder ran through the assembled ships. Their engines hummed, and bright plumes of energy marked their passage. One by one, they slipped through the councils barrier into the void. The icy expanse swallowed them whole. Behind them, the dome's doors slammed shut. The judges watched the screens go dark, and a cold silence filled the hall. They believed their action delivered justice. They believed humanity would fade into extinction. Deep in the void, human ships clustered around a frozen planet under faint starlight. The air was thin and cold burned through shields, yet humans stepped onto the frozen soil with steady hearts. Engineers scrambled to deploy solar mirrors on the icy plains. Farmers set up greenhouse domes under glowing heat lights. Children stared at the pale sun above the ice, wondering if they would ever see warm rain again. In tents lined with repurposed ship panels, families gathered. They held hands and told stories of Earth's green forests and clear rivers. Laughter mingled with tears. They sang old songs to keep the memory alive. Toddler, too young to know. Exile looked up at her mother and asked, "Will we ever go home?" The mother pressed her child close and whispered, "Perhaps one day, but we will make this place our home until then." That night, the envoy walked alone along the ice field, her breath misting in the frigid air. Above her, distant lights glimmered, refugee ships clustering like desperate fireflies. She touched the cold glass of her helmet and remembered the council chamber. It had given them a final chance. Now, she vowed silently, she would show them why they regretted exile. In the darkness, a single human torch burned bright. It was small, but its light stretched across the frozen wasteland. It was a promise. Humanity endures. And even in exile, hope takes root. The morning sun rose, pale and distant over the ice plains. Human engineers rushed to unfold massive solar mirrors. Each mirror reflected light down narrow shafts, melting frost into steaming clouds. Beneath the ice, workers in heated tunnels set up greenhouses. They planted rows of wheat and tubers in rich soil gathered from ship holds. Each seed was precious, a thread of life in the frozen desert. When the first sprout broke soil, a cheer echoed through the tunnels like thunder. In one greenhouse, biologist Dr. Navid knelt beside a young plant. He brushed frost from its leaves and whispered, "Grow strong for us." His voice shook. This fragile green hope was more than food. It was proof that humanity could bloom anywhere. Across the hall, a nurse cradled an infant born under ice. The baby's cheeks were rosy from the warm lights. Nurses sang lullabies of rain and songbirds to calm him. Those melodies lived memories of home. Above ground, scouts strapped on insulated suits and climbed tall ice spires. They used scanners to map hidden caverns and mineral veins. Every new resource meant better shelters, stronger tools, and hope against hunger. One scout, Zara, slipped on an icy ledge and nearly fell. Her partner caught her arm, steadying her with a firm grip. They stared at each other, breath visible. In the cold, neither spoke. In that silent moment, they felt how much they depended on each other and on every soul in this frozen exile. At the command hub, General Markovna and the envoy watched the scanner's glowing lines. The map of the ice world looked like a web of shining streams. Markovna rubbed her temple. "We must make this place safe. We cannot live on hope alone." The envoy tapped the screen. Our warning to Erythros spoke of fire. "Here we forge that fire into steel and resolve." Their eyes met, and a spark passed between them, determination, tempered by care for everyone under their command. By midday, workshops hummed with activity. Miners broke ice for water and carved blocks into building materials. Blacksmiths heated metal, shaped from council wreckage. They forged blades, pipes, and sturdy beams. The clang of hammer on steel rang clear in the cold air, a promise that humans would not bow. In one forge, a young smith named Pilar held a glowing ingot and thought of her family aboard the mother ship. She hammered carefully, each strike shaping hope for their future. When evening fell, lights glowed inside dome villages like distant stars. Families emerged to gather around communal fires. They shared steaming bowls of vegetable stew, the warmth chasing away both chill and fear. Children laughed as they played simple games, their bright voices carrying across the ice fields. Elders sat wrapped in blankets, eyes misty as they remembered. The warm breezes of earth, though far from home, they built new traditions, hear songs, and stories for the next generation. That night, the envoy walked under the shimmering aurora that danced above the ice. Colors of green and purple swept the sky in silent waves. She paused, breath-forming clouds in the freezing air, and placed a hand on the smooth ice. "We survive," she whispered to the world. "We grow." In her mind, she saw Erythros' judges watching from their distant dome. They believed humanity would wither in this void. Instead, they would witness human life thriving under impossible skies. Deep inside the largest greenhouse, Dr. Navid tapped at his console. Data scrolled across the screen. Growing rates, soil quality, water use. He smiled softly. Each measurement meant better yields, stronger food supplies, and more time to build defenses. He closed his eyes and let himself feel pride. In exile, humans would not only live, they would set a beacon in the darkness, a testament to their unbreakable will. The ice world had become more than prison. It had become the cradle of a new dawn. Beneath the ice plains, humans carved great halls from solid blue ice. Long tunnels wound deep into the frozen ground. In these hidden spaces, engineers and artisans worked side by side. It transformed mining lasers into defensive turrets. They melted council scrap metal and reforged it into hull plating for new ships. Sparks flew like tiny stars, lighting hard faces with fierce determination. In the heart of the forge stood Captain Reyes. She wiped sweat from her brow, though the air was near freezing. Her hands moved with practiced ease as she guided a welder's torch. Around her, younger workers watched closely, eager to learn. Reyes paused and spoke softly. "Every piece we make is a promise to protect our people and our home." Her words carried weight. Each listener felt pride surge in their chest. Above them, in a high-ceilinged cavern, a team of pilots trained on simulators. Screens showed aerothrows, cruisers, and blockade patterns. A pilot named Juno gripped the controls with steady hands. She remembered the feeling of fear when Exile began. Now, that fear had turned to resolve. "We will fly not for revenge," she told her instructor, "but for justice." The instructor nodded, smiling with approval. In another ice chamber, scientists tweaked the greenhouse systems. They tested new strains of algae that glowed under ultraviolet light. These algae would power small reactors and scout drones. Biologist Dr. Patel tapped at her console. "If we light the sky above the ice, our presence will become legend."
Ow.
She laughed softly. Around her, assistants joined in that hopeful laughter. Science was their weapon and their gift. Children, born in exile, attended classes under heat lamps. They learned history of Earth's great ships and explorers. They practiced drills in light-armored suits. A girl named Mira ran across an obstacle course, her laugh echoing on metal walls. She stumbled. Older cadets helped her up. She smiled and saluted. In that salute lived the spirit of every exile, hope rising from hardship. General Markovna visited the hidden forge late one night. She paused at the entrance, watching the blue glow from welding arcs. She remembered the council chamber's laughter, their certainty that humans would perish in ice. Now she saw proof of their folly. She stepped inside and offered quiet thanks to every worker. Each strike of hammer and flash of torch was a step toward rebirth. Above ground, a network of ice mirrors and relay stations hummed with power. Scouts sent data on council movements and patrol routes. These hidden eyes watched Erythro's worlds from icy peaks. One scout, Raffi, shivered as snow fell around him. He stared at his comlink display. It showed a convoy of council transports headed to a distant system. He tapped his helmet mic. "Command, we have their path. They move supplies." In the command hub, leaders leaned forward. Every bit of knowledge mattered. As dawn broke over the ice, humans gathered for a ceremony in the largest dome. The servant of Unity, Leah, stepped forward with an ingot of melted council alloy. She presented it to the envoy. "We forged this from what they threw away," Leah said, voice trembling with pride. The envoy held the ingot high. "This is proof," she declared, "that from cold exile, we create warmth for the galaxy." Families cheered, voices ringing like church bells in the frozen halls. That night, the envoy wrote a new message to Erythros. Her words were calm, but every line carried steel. She described the hidden forges, the growing fleet, the children, training to defend their home. She ended with a single sentence: "We warned you once. This is only the beginning of our strength." She paused before sending it, knowing the council would read every word. Then she pressed transmit and watched the glow fade from the console. Far above the ice, the stars shone cold and distant. Yet below them, humanity's hidden forge burned bright. In Exile's heart, humans found the fire they needed, shaped it with their hands, guided by hope and fierce love for each other. In that fire, they carried a warning louder than any cannon. Exile would not break them, it would forge them anew. And when the galaxy saw that flame, it would learn to regret the day it forced humanity into the void. Before dawn, the envoy stood in the command hub, its walls alive with data streams. She watched as technicians prepared a single human ship to slip past the Erythros blockade. The vessel carried no missiles, only a small transmitter and a powerful message. Around her, officers moved with tense excitement. Tonight, humanity would speak through steel and code. Captain Reyes climbed into the pilot's seat. She adjusted her helmet and felt the hum of new engines beneath her.
Outside, the sky was empty, but she knew eyes watched her every move.
Hand hovered over the launch button. She thought of every child born under ice, every farmer tending green shoots in the dark. This mission carried their hopes. With a firm breath, she pressed launch. The ship shot forward, slipping through patrol scans like a shadow. Inside, Reyes monitored the blockade pattern on her screen. She guided the vessel through narrow gaps between Aerithro's cruisers. Every heartbeat felt loud in her ears. When she cleared the last patrol, her fingers flew over controls to activate the transmitter. A single, clear broadcast began. Across the galaxy, Aerithro's worlds paused in shock. Screens in council chambers flickered to life with scenes from the ice world. Families huddled under dim greenhouse lights. Engineers labored in hidden forges. Children in armored suits practiced drills. The envoy's voice echoed through secure frequencies. You forced us into the void. You believed we would perish. Instead, we thrived. Now we stand ready. Dawn. The council's crystal dome. Judges stared at the screen in stunned silence. The chief judge's hand trembled as he reached for his glass of dark wine. He had laughed at the envoy's warning, laughed when they cast humans out. Now he saw the truth. Humanity had not died. They had grown stronger. He swallowed hard and whispered, "What have we done?" Back in the void, technicians watched the blockade's reaction. Some held their breath. Others clenched fists in triumph. The envoy's face glowed blue in the data screen. She allowed herself a small, proud smile. "They will recall their fleet," she murmured. General Markovna placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Let them think twice before they strike." In distant trade stations, merchants and diplomats received the broadcast with awe. Rumors spread that humans had forged living cities under ice, that they had built weapons without killing. They trained children to defend hope itself. Some systems sent envoys to offer aid. Others quietly prepared to side with humanity. The tide of opinion began to turn. On the ice world, people gathered around monitors and dome lounges. When the envoy finished speaking, every hand went to heart. Choir of voices rose and unplanned song a human hymn about survival and strength. Tears fell freely as families sang. Old soldiers wept, remembering the council's cruelty. Young engineers laughed through tears, proud of what they built. In that moment, Exile felt like victory. As the envoy ended the broadcast, a final message appeared: "We warned you. Now we act." Then the screen went dark. Silence filled the hub. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the phones rang and alarms blared. Orders came to recall Aerithro's ships. Patrols turned back toward the void. In every command center, leaders realized they faced a force they could not ignore. That night, under an aurora-lit sky, humans walked across ice fields with lifted chins. Captain Reyes returned to cheering crowds. Children reached up, trying to touch the sky's colored lights. Engineers clapped hands with soldiers. The envoy watched from a raised platform, her chest swelling with pride and sorrow. They had sent the first signal. It warned the galaxy. Far above, distant stars witnessed humanity's rising. In Exile, humans had sent a bright flame into the darkness, a call that could not be silenced. And as Aerithro's ships sped home in retreat, the galaxy would know, you do not cast out humanity and live unchallenged. The first signal had been sent. The next was only a matter of time. News of the first signal spread quickly through the void and beyond. On every human ship, alarms signaled updates. Families crowded around screens in cramped cabins. They saw council vessels turning away, retreating into familiar space lanes. Jubilant cries filled the corridors. Mothers hugged children tightly. Engineers high-fived one another amid glowing consoles. Even the old veterans, hardened by war and loss, smiled with relief. They had sent a warning, and it had worked. There was no time for celebration. General Markovna convened a council in the largest dome. Holographic maps of Aerithro's space floated above the table. Red lines marked patrol routes and supply convoys. The envoy stood beside her, arms crossed. "They regret exile," the envoy said quietly. "But regret is not surrender. We must press our advantage." Officers listened in tense silence. Each knew the council still held power to strike back. Below the ice, workshops switched from forging defenses to building more ships. Welders worked through the night, guided by searchlights on the ice surface. Pilots like Juno ran new flight tests under artificial stars. They practiced silent approaches and precision blackouts. Each successful run built confidence and built fear in Erythro's commanders. Meanwhile, scouts mapped hidden passages through asteroid fields beyond the void, looking for new supply lines. Humanity would not only defend, they would expand where others feared to tread. In quiet moments, the envoy walked among the people. She visited the greenhouses, where Dr. Patel and her team monitored glowing algae. "Your work fed us and lit our future," the envoy told them. Biologists beamed, proud that science had become a weapon of hope. She spoke to the smiths in the forge, where Pilar hammered glowing metal into new hull plates. Each strike sang a promise: humans would not be broken. On the surface, children watched the sky trainers. They wore light suits and mimed maneuvers with gravity jets. Mira, the youngest cadet, soared in the simulator and landed with a perfect glide. Her laughter rang clear through the dome. Parents cheered, tears of pride in their eyes. In that dome, laughter and hope rose above ice and fear. As days passed, council traders began to approach with offers of peace. Envoys carried silver seals and petitions, but the envoy refused them. "Peace on their terms would be peace under their rule," she said. "We offer peace on ours." She drafted new demands: an official apology, return of stolen worlds, and open trade agreements. Then she pressed transmit. Across the galaxy, systems watched in awe. Some rallied to humanity's standard. Others feared the fire they had seen flicker in exile. In council chambers, judges debated fiercely. Some argued to crush the humans now, others warned that a full-scale war would leave both sides shattered. The chief judge, haunted by the envoy's words, fell silent. He remembered the warning: exile would ignite a fire they could not control. Back in the void, the human fleet gathered for a demonstration. Ships arrayed in formation, blue lights tracing new battle lines. On every bridge, pilots saluted the envoy and General Markovna. Families watched from viewing galleries, eyes shining with tears. The envoy spoke into the hush: "We rose from your exile. Now we stand as one people. Let the galaxy see our strength and choose its side." As the fleet powered up its silent engines, a distant radio beacon flickered to life. It was an Erythros warship, asking permission to dock for talks. The envoy exchanged a look with Markovna. In that brief moment, rage and relief warred within them. They had forced the council to respect humanity's power. They had shown the galaxy what humans could do in exile. Above the ice plains, the aurora danced again, green and purple. The light shivered across solar mirrors and ship hulls. Under its glow, humans stood tall, proud, united, and ready. Exile had forged their fury into purpose, and now they would use that purpose to shape a new destiny for all. In the Grand Council chamber of Erythros, once regal marble now felt cold and hollow. The chief judge paced before a fractured holomap of the void. He pressed trembling fingers to his temples. The envoy's words echoed through his mind: exile will ignite a fire you cannot control. Now that fire burned too close. Ministers gathered in tense huddles. One whispered, "We underestimated them." Another wept quietly. "Our children asked why we cast out humanity." Guilt weighed on every heart. Beside the dome, patrols no longer dared to challenge the void's border. Even Erythros's proud fleets hovered uncertain, powerless against the human will. Back in the ice forges, Pilar paused, her hammering to read council communiques. Each message spoke of apology, but none matched the envoy's demands. She pressed a gloved hand to her chest. They regret exile, but regret is not enough. Around her, smiths nodded in solemn agreement, sparks drifting like falling stars. In the command hub, the envoy stood before a wall of incoming offers. Gifts of rare minerals, pledges of non-aggression, even pleas for aid in war against other foes. She tapped a message from the council's chief minister: "We beg your forgiveness." She read it silently, brow furrowed. Forgiveness must be earned, not begged. General Markovna entered the room, her boots echoing on metal grating. "They will kneel," the envoy said softly, "but only if we remain standing strong." Markovna nodded. "Then we must make them see our strength is our compassion, not our wrath." Together, they drafted the final terms: full restitution, open borders, and shared research. Meanwhile, scouts relayed clandestine images of Erythros's inner worlds. Glowing domed cities, ancient libraries, and proud plazas stood empty as citizens debated their future. On street corners, families read human news feeds, eyes wide with awe and shame. Humanity's story in exile became their cautionary tale. Under the ice, children practiced mock parades. They marched in neat lines, brandishing replica flags half white, half blue. Parents watched through observation windows, tears glistening. These children would grow up knowing how they turned exile into a home. They would inherit a legacy not of defeat, but of dignified triumph. In a silent ceremony in the largest dome, the envoy addressed a human delegation. She held a scroll inscribed with the council's formal apology and treaty. "Let this bind us," she said, voice clear. "May we forge a future together." Soldiers lowered their heads in respect. Civilians clapped softly, hope blooming in every chest. The scroll was flown to the surface chamber. There the chief judge knelt before the envoy on a raised dais. His voice shook. "We were wrong. We see now the error of our fears. We ask not only your pardon, but your partnership." A hush fell. The envoy extended her hand. Together they rose, sealing humanity's place among the stars. News of the treaty rippled through both societies. On human ships, alarms signaled. Official channels. Families gathered at windows to watch Erythro's vessels glide toward the void. When the first diplomats stepped onto frozen ground, humans cheered in joyous unison. The cold air carried their laughter across white plains. Erythro's worlds, statues of old judges were quietly removed. In their place, memorials to humanity's resilience were erected, crystalline sculptures of ships breaking through ice. Pilgrims traveled to icebound embassies to learn how humans turned exile into opportunity. Songs of unity echoed in one silent plazas. General Markovna stood before a newly built peace monument on the ice world. Families from both species placed blossoms at its base. She thought of every engineer in the hidden forge, every child who learned to fly under ice, every scientist who coaxed life from frozen soil. Their unity had changed the galaxy. That night, the envoy walked under stars that no longer felt distant. Aurora curtains swayed overhead, weaving green and violet across the sky. Children from two worlds danced in snowdrifts, friends at last. She smiled, tears glinting on her cheeks. In their union, the galaxy found real strength born from mercy, forged by exile. As the aurora faded, a new dawn rose over the ice plains. Bright sunlight warmed frozen domes and melting frost like gentle gold. Humans and Erythros citizens emerged together to greet the day. In that shared sunrise, exile's shadow was banished. And a brighter future took hold, one written by hands once bound, now free. The first light of morning crept over the ice plains, turning the frozen fields into a sea of rose gold. Humans and Erythros citizens gathered side by side at the central plaza, where a great banner fluttered in the calm wind. It bore two symbols, Earth's rising sun and Erythros's crystal star. Today they celebrated unity born from hardship. Families from both worlds walked together, sharing hot tea in simple clay cups. Children darted through the crowd, trailing laughter like ribbons. A young Erythros mother held her daughter's hand as they watched human boys roll glowing snowballs. The mother's eyes shone with wonder. Daughter giggled and pressed a snowball to her cheek, the cold making her smile brighter. At the edge of the plaza, musicians from Erythros played soft melodies on crystal flutes. Human drummers tapped gentle rhythms on metal drums, forged in the hidden forges. The music wove together, rising into a hopeful song that spoke of peace and renewal. Listeners closed their eyes, letting the harmony fill their hearts with warmth. In the center, General Markovna and the chief judge stood beneath an arch of ice carved into the shape of joined hands. Markovna's silver hair caught the morning light. She spoke in a clear voice. We were forced into exile, and we could have perished. But you saw our warning, and you chose compassion over fear. Today we stand as one people. Her words echoed across the plaza. The chief judge stepped forward, his usual dignity softened by genuine emotion. He faced the crowd and bowed deeply. We failed in our duty to see your true spirit. We judged you by fear, not by your hearts. For that we apologize. From this day, we build our future together, side by side. His voice broke on the last word. Some citizens wiped tears from their cheeks. Below them, Laya and Dr. Patel released a cluster of glowing algae spores into the crisp air. As the spores drifted upward, they caught sunlight and glowed like tiny fireflies. Children chased after them in the snow, their laughter chasing the floating lights. The spores settled on ice and soil, promising new growth and reminding all that life finds a way. Nearby, Captain Reyes watched with Mira at her side. The young cadet pointed to the sky, where a human cruiser and an Erythros frigate flew in close formation. They will patrol together now, Reyes said gently. Not as conqueror and conquered, but as guardians of peace. Mira nodded solemnly, her eyes bright with pride. On a raised dais, the envoy unfurled a scroll bearing the names of every human and Erythros citizen who had worked to build this new world. Each name glowed under soft blue light. She turned to the crowd and said, "These are the hands that shaped our peace. Their courage and compassion remind us that exile can forge not despair, but hope." A wave of applause rose, growing until it shook the plaza. As the ceremony ended, people formed long lines to share food and stories in heated tents. They passed bowls of hearty stew made from greenhouse harvests. Erythros artists sketched human engineers in lively charcoal portraits. Human poets recited verses praising Erythros, scholars who had taught children both languages. Each exchange wove a tighter bond between two peoples once divided. When the sun reached its zenith, a gentle warmth touched the ice. Snowflakes melted. At the edges of domes and small streams trickled through carved channels. The gathered crowd felt a collective breath of relief. In the bright thawing day, they saw not a prison of ice, but a shining cradle for their shared future. That evening, under a sky painted with aurora, humans and Erythros danced around a great bonfire. Flames leapt high, mirrored by flickering lights in the ice spires. General Markovna and the envoy stood together, watching the celebration. The envoy whispered, "We warned them, and they chose to learn." Markovna nodded, smiling softly. In every face, they saw the promise of tomorrow, a galaxy where fear no longer ruled, where peace could bloom even on frozen worlds. Exile had tested humanity's spirit. Now it had revealed its greatest strength, the power to forgive, to rebuild, and to stand together as one. Under the dancing lights, they raised their voices in song, and the night rang with the promise of a new dawn.